Hello. In this NCERT series, now we'll see the chapter Weavers, Iron Smelters, and Factory Owners. Okay. So, in the previous chapter, to summarize what we have learned, first we have learned how British and other Europeans have come to India and how they established their colonies, etc. In the second chapter, we have seen how they have ruled the countryside. That means agriculture, how farmers revolted against them, the indigo production, the plantations, the slavery, etc. And in the one we have seen the tribals, the forest laws imposed on tribals, and how tribals revolted against British, etc. Right. In the next chapter, we have seen the major revolt of 1857, how people revolted in 1857, what was the main reason behind that, and how people of different cities and different kingdoms have come forward to fight against British, right? And we also seen some of the policies of British, like subsidiary alliance, doctrine of lapse, company rule have changed to crown rule, etc., right? So you have seen that in the previous chapters. Now we'll see what were the important industries in India during the British time. Okay. So one is textile industry, another is iron and steel industry. So Britain used to import materials from India and other colonies, and it used to produce there in their own factories. So there were n number of factories in Britain, and it was called the workshop of the world. Okay, so Britain was called workshop of the world because of its n number of industries and growing importance of iron and steel industries in Britain. So what was the pattern before the trade from India to Britain? So India used to buy the things and it used to export it to Britain. Before 1765, before acquiring Diwani rights, how did Britain buy the things from India? It used to import gold and silver from Britain, and with that amount of money, it used to buy the raw materials in India. But after acquiring Diwani rights in 1765, it got the right to collect revenue from Bengal. Right, so it collected the revenue from Bengal. So whatever the revenue they got, they used to buy those materials. So it was in that pattern. They used to buy and export it to Britain. But later on, what happened? So they used to buy raw materials from India, and they used to process them in the Britain factories. So after processing in factories, we get finished goods, right? So we used to get finished goods. So Britain sold that finished goods in the Indian markets. So raw markets was taken from India, and British used this industrialization process, and they produced finished goods and they sold them in Indian markets. So after a point of time, what happened? The Indian market, the Indian handicrafts, those all got declined completely, and the Indian markets were completely flooded with the British goods. Okay, British cloth, British goods, etc. All were with British goods. So Indian handicrafts and Indian cloth was completely drastically decreased. So we have seen that there are two important industries which has come into light, right? Textiles and iron and steel. So we'll see about textiles. So India has been a largest producer of cotton textiles, and along with production, it also used to export these cotton textiles to Southeast Asia, West Asia, and also Central Asia. So it used to send it to Central Asia. So one of the famous fabric which is called Mosul, right? It was seen it was carried by Arab merchants. So one of them saw in Iraq. It was carried by Arab merchants. So it was a very fine woven cloth of very fine quality. So it was a woven cloth. So anglicized version, it got developed into a word called muslin cloth. It is very famous Indian woven cloth, right? So when Indians traded with Arab merchants, so they have also traded this muslin cloth, and that attracted people to trade with Indian textiles, right? So Indians, the fabric which is being exported from India to Britain, that is called calico, which is derived from the word calicut. So what are the type of fabrics that India exported to Britain? First one is chint or chintz. So this type of fabric is called chint. These small flower patterns all over the fabric is called as chintz pattern. And the next is khasa. So khasa is a print that is from India. It was exported to Britain. And then bandhana. So bandhana, or we call bhandhani or bandhana, it came from the word bandhana. What is meaning of bandhana? It is to tie. So this is a process, during the process of tie and dye, it used to get the we used to get this type of fabric, and it was also very popular in the British era. So these chains, kasa and bandhana, were important kind of fabrics that were imported to Britain. So chins was an important fabric. Even the royalty, the queens and kings used to wear this type of fabric, and it was very much admired in European country. I mean England, and also other European countries like France and Spain. So what were the main areas in India that were famous for these textiles? Is Kasim Bazar, Patna, Calcutta, Orissa and Charpur. Okay. So what happened? Britishers have seen that British government, or people in British who are producing textiles, they have seen that there is a lot of demand for Indian textiles. So they were importing Indian textiles, and the small industries what were there in in Britain who were producing textiles, their demand was getting down. So what happened? They requested the government to ban on all the fabrics that are imported from India. So they have banned this chintz, import of chintz from India to Britain, right? So that is called as the Calico Act. In 1720, Calico Act was imposed that banned the export of, that banned the import of chintz fabric from India to Britain. Okay, so it was synthetic. It was produced in the factories of British itself. So they used to take some unbleached cloth or white cloth that is produced in Indian fabrics, and they used to print their own patterns like flower patterns or whatever it might be. It was identical to this chintz pattern. Okay. So what happened? Slowly the British industries developed, and there were some major discoveries like the 1764 a spinning jenny was introduced. Okay, this is called the spinning jenny. So now a lot of fabrics at a time, there are a lot of textiles can be woven, like woven and spun and all weaved. Everything was done in a faster way during this machine, like by this machine. So there were a rapid production of goods. Many goods and textiles can be produced from this. So spinning jenny was introduced, which created revolution in the British textile industry. So who invented spinning jenny? John Kay. In 1786, steam engine was steam engine was discovered by Richard Arkwright. This also created a major revolution in the British industries. So by these discoveries and also synthetic dyes, etc., so the textile industry in Britain have got more and more developed. So the import independence of India has decreased. So now they can produce their own cloth by the spinning jenny, and they can print their own cloth. They have stopped the import of chins and etc., right? And so they can produce their cloth, they can produce their prints, etc. So the import dependence have come down. So now what happened? Next, what are the weaving centers in India? Weaving centers mainly concentrated in 4 areas of India. The first is in the Bengal. Okay. So this area in the Bengal area, one is Bengal area, and the other is the Dhaka. Where is Dhaka? The present day Bangladesh, Dhaka. So Dhaka, and then we have Coromandel Coast, that is from Madras and etc. Like, so this area was another important area, and next is Gujarat. We know Surat and etc. Right? So Gujarat. So these were the main 4 weaving centers of. There were different centers, but 4 regions were mainly concentrated. Okay, so Bengal, Dhaka, Coromandel Coast region, and Gujarat. Okay. So the different type of weavers. So what were they called? In Bengal, they were called Tanti weavers. In North India, they were called Julahas and Momin weavers. In South India, they were called Salek, Kaikolar, and Devangs. These were different communities of weavers. Okay. So what was the weaving stages? We'll see them one by one. So first is the Charaka and Takli. So Charaka and Takli, we know about this. Gandhiji used it for famous Khadi revolution and etc. Right? So they are used to generate yarn from, right? Cotton tends to go, we produce yarn and then we produce fabric, right? So these charaka and takli are used to for spinning and producing yarn. Okay, after producing we send it to weaver. So Indian this was the weaving machine and etc. So they used to weave the fabric. After weaving we get a plain fabric, right? So we have to dye it, right? We get different colors, right? That is called dyeing. They used to dip in a tub of color, right? They used to dip the fabric and they used to take it out, so that gets the color of the fabric. That is called rangrez. He's called rangrez. And then printing, the prints whatever we had, that some of them were due by the block prints. So there were blocks, so blocks has these designs like this, so that was imprinted on the fabric. So those block printers were called chippy guards. So these were different stages. One was charaka and takli, and then we used this weaving, and then they used to dye the cloth, and then they used to print the cloth. So these were the traditional method of producing textiles in India. So how did they decline? How did Indian textiles decline in the international market? So we have seen earlier how did Indian textiles decline because of the spinning jenny and also steam engine and other ban of imports in the like chins, etc. So everyone started to produce textiles. So India was not able to compete with other other countries. So the competition was getting more and more. It was not able to compete, and because of main duties, the taxes were imposed. Large taxes were imposed for countries who were importing from India. So large taxes were imposed. When large taxes are imposed, people don't buy them usually, right? The local goods are given importance than the imported goods. So large duties also were a cause for decline of Indian industry, textile industries. And then where did these weavers go? So they started to go for other skilled works, and they also worked in spinning mills, right? They then we'll see later on how spinning mills were started, etc. They worked in that mills, and they also used to go out for some other work. So weaving and the traditional way of weaving and producing textiles completely got declined. So we know this famous revolt where Gandhiji has started a revolution called boycott foreign goods, and we only use khadi goods. So khadi are fabrics which are traditionally made by Indians, so that we will encourage Indian goods and will boycott these foreign goods. That was the main slogan for this khadi revolution. Then, so cotton mills were started. Automation of cotton mills, right? So first spinning mill was started in 1854 in Bombay, right? Why it was grown in why it was started in Bombay? Because cotton was grown mostly in Maharashtra and Gujarat. We have seen the last chapter, right, where tea plantations are grown in Assam, jute plantations are grown in Bengal. The same way cotton is grown in Maharashtra and Gujarat. So Maharashtra has this amount of black soil which is very suitable for cotton. So Bombay is part of Maharashtra, right? So the cotton mill was established in Bombay in year 1854 because there were a good production of cotton due to its abundant black soil. And later on, this was the first mill established. Then Parsi and Gujarati traders, they started, they also came forward for establishing spinning mills, and thereby slowly the number increased to 84 spinning mills. And the other spinning mill was started in 1861, and then mainly it went to Kanpur, United Provinces, etc. Right. And what happened during World War One? The demand for the textiles increased because British was not able to produce so many goods and etc. Right, because it was in a warlike situation. So during World War One, India's demand, like the spinning mills and that particular textile industry, have got demand to produce it globally. Okay, so this was about the textile industry. Now we'll say about the iron and steel industry. Right, we have seen textile industry and iron and steel industry were the main industries during the British period. So we have got done about textile industry. Now we'll say about the iron and steel industry. So when you remember the previous chapter, we have discussed a character called a king called Tipu Sultan. So who was Tipu Sultan? Tipu Sultan was the ruler of Mysore. He fought many wars in Britain, right? He died in the Battle of Seringapatam while he was trying to protect his capital, Seringapatam. He died in that. So he was a great. He was also known as the Tiger of Mysore because he was known for his valor and his extraordinary skills. So he was called Tiger of Mysore, and he was a great ruler of Mysore. Okay. So he used to carry a knife, which was very strong, and it can be run through enemy's armor, etc. Right? So it was very strong and very sharp, and it can go through armor. It can go to the body, like it can create a heavy damage to the enemy, whoever is fighting with that particular person. So that is called carbon steel. So they have researched it and they have seen that this is called carbon steel. I mean, that's called woods. How did we get that? By mixing iron with charcoal. So basically, it is combining iron with some beads of carbon, or like that, right? So they used to mix iron and carbon, and they used to produce a powerful metal called Wood's metal. So they tried to they tried to understand it, and they used to understand the production and manufacturing. So they got to know it was produced by iron and charcoal. It was burnt in some temperature, and that particular solution is poured into clay pots, and then it was made into knives and etc. like that. So this was the process that British got to know about the Wood's steel, right? It is a special kind of steel a special kind of metal which had good properties. So woods is also called as ukku in Kannada and Telugu, and urukku in Tamil, right? So which basically means steel. Okay. So these particular metal was mainly used in South India. It was mainly manufactured in South India. As we know, a famous scientist called Michael Faraday. So when you read physics, you'll come to know Michael Faraday has got there's laws of electromagnetism, electric current, etc. Right? So he also studied these properties of woods. He spent several months and years to study the properties of woods. What is this metal? Why is it so peculiar? And what is its speciality? So Michael Faraday also conducted experiments on wood steel. Okay. So mainly this was the steel industry. But later on, the steel industry and iron industry in India have got decreased. Why? Because in the previous chapter we have seen there were some forest laws which were imposed by British on the tribal people. That means you are not permitted to collect the produce here, or you're not permitted to take any of the metals or anything, right? They're not permitted to collect the forest produce. They're not permitted to settle over there. So these were the abhorrent forest laws which British brought towards tribals, and also high taxes. Whoever is collecting, even though they are permitted to collect iron and other materials, they were not taken. They did not take them freely. They used to get. They used to be paying high taxes to the British. So whoever want to take iron, they have to pay high taxes. So this was the rule of Britishers. So they imposed forest laws to stop the produce of to stop taking the produce of forest, and also they imposed high taxes. Right, whoever was collecting the iron, they used to pay high taxes to the British government. So they were unable to pay there was a decline in the iron and steel industry in India. Okay, maybe the producing of iron and producing of these particular steel, so that got decreased. So they started to import iron. In 1904, Dorabji Tata and Charles Weld, they started to search for iron ore. Where they were to start search for iron ore and to establish iron and steel factory. So they started to search. So they were searching, and one day they found Agarias. Agarias are people of hills, right? They are tribes. So once they were carrying iron ore of very fine quality, so they were asked. Tata and Weld asked, "Where are you getting these from?" So they pointed to a source, and there were the Rajhara Hills. So where are these Rajhara Hills? They are in the Jharkhand, Palamu district of Jharkhand. So they pointed to Rajhara district. So they thought this would be the best place to establish a iron and steel factory. But when we have to establish a factory, we see all the factors, right? It needs to have water, it needs to have transport, right? It needs to have good power and all, right? Only then we can establish a factory. But when they have seen Rajahara Hills, it had iron ore, but it did not have enough water supply. It was so dry. So they thought this is not the place where you get the things. But later on, not at this moment, but later on, when Bhilai steel plant was established, the raw materials were taken from this particular place. Then after these, Tata and Weld were searching for a particular iron ore and the correct location for industry. So what are the main needs for to locate and to establish industry? It has to have water, it has to have transport, it has to have raw material and also power supply, etc. Right? So raw material was found in Rajahara, but water was not found. So they were searching and searching for some other place. So they stopped at a point near the river Subarna Rekha. It is also in a place in Jharkhand. So they stopped by a river Subarna Rekha. They thought here we'll get raw materials at a very near, like in a it was very near. The availability of raw materials was very near, right? And they had water because of Subarna Rekha, and there was a other adjacent river known as Kharkai. So Subarna Rekha and Kharkai river will produce some water for us, like we'll get water from those particular things, and the transport was also very easy. Okay, so this was the apt location for establishing an industry. So they have established TISCO, Tata Industries of Tata Iron and Steel Companies. So TISCO was started in 1912 by Tata. Okay. So what happened? Where did they use main iron and steel in India? So it was railways was the main market of iron and steel. So when they have seen railways required more and more, railways were being developed during that time, right? So our railways required more and more amounts of iron and steel. So Tata's TISCO started producing more and more steel for the railways. They saw railway as the potential market. And during World War One, we needed iron and steel, and British was not able to export because it was stuck in war and etc. Right? So there was a need for iron and steel which is produced in India. Then during World War One, TISCO have produced um, iron and steel for railways and other purposes. So then onwards, British have also started to take the produce from TISCO itself. So here we have seen a pattern. What happens is when imports are decreased, Indian markets are flourishing. So imports here in the textile industry also we have seen when there was World War One and other imports were not possible and etc. Then the Indian textile industry, like which was produced in India, has got increased. And again here also when the British imports and imports have decreased. So then what happened? Indian industries have got a chance to emerge, and they have showed their worth. So when imports decrease, when dependence of imports decrease and the colonial structure decreases, then only Indian industries can have a chance to emerge as a big industries, right? So this is about the weaving in textile industry and iron and steel industry. We'll meet you in the next chapter.